Hello, it's me, and as part of the quest journey that I have to try to get as many viewer requests as possible in celebration of the over 1,000 subscribers, I'm going to do this handsome little gentleman here. This is the Master Kilominx. Now, this is not the mass-produced version. As a matter of fact, when I bought this, it was not mass-produced. This was back when it was a Shapeways product. Very happy with it. The turning is very, very smooth. To be honest with you, some of these puzzles that are on Shapeways and assembled like this tend to be a lot more stable than some of the mass-produced versions. So this actually, as you can see, it moves really, really well. So if the color scheme isn't quite what you're used to, the solve is still the same. Now this takes its place or takes its proper role. We went over the megaminx solve, and I kind of like the size proportion of this because it's proportioned very similarly. I don't know if the color scheme is exactly the same. I kind of like to see a color scheme that's similar, but it's, you know, it's okay. So this is the 3-layer version. This is the 4-layer version over here. So because this is an odd puzzle, as opposed to, I'm sorry, because it's an even puzzle, as you know, we worry about this odd phenomenon called parity, because to solve this, I guess it's an even phenomenon, but to solve this, it's a process of reduction, where when you look at this, you have a situation where you take these components, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, these 5 pieces have to be reduced down to a center. I don't know if you can maybe see better over here with the yellow color. But anyway, this is converted into this. We have an edge here and 2 corners. We have basically 2 things that become an edge, 2 components of an edge, and the corners are the same. So we solve this basically by reduction. Now the thing about even layered puzzles is when you scramble it and then you reduce it, sometimes you reduce it in a position that you could never have scrambled it into if you started out as odd. So we're basically converting this from an even puzzle to an odd puzzle. If you convert it wrong, you end up with parity problems. And one of the big questions I'm sure a lot of you guys have, to those that haven't solved this, is do we get parities on dodecahedrons? Now we know to get out of that in the cube version we have to do various algorithms like that Red Bull algorithm. So this will be an example of how to variate algorithms and to show, do we get parity with this? Well, let's discover it. And just for the purposes of looking at this in conjunction with other things we've done, if this is the 3-layer, 3-layer, 4-layer, there's the 2-layer. I demonstrated the Kilominx by way of this, the crystal Pyraminx. But if you really wanted the actual Kilominx, it's over here. This is the mass-produced version of it. There are Shapeways versions that look more like this without the flower in the center, but honestly, a little too expensive for my taste. This gave me pretty much what I need, moves pretty well. So really this is an edgeless, centerless, pure corner puzzle, as all 2-layered puzzles are. So this is actually the 2-layered version of that Kilominx. The step just above this, of course, and I'm not going to get into the whole family tree right now, but then you've got the 5-layer version, this big bohunkin guy over here, which more resembles this. As you can see, we have a single, well, we have 3 edges, but we have a keystone edge in the middle here, just like we have here. Then we have 2 more components of the edges over here, then the corners, then we have much more complicated centers to deal with. This one I got a long time ago. You can see the stickers are already eroding away because of all the abuse that I got, that I put this through. So in any case, this is more like this than this, because I'll tell you that the properties that odd or even puzzles display are very different because of more degrees of freedom in terms of how you can scramble it and less assurance as to if you're reducing it correctly. This, you'll always be able to reduce it correctly because you could see. So, in terms of scrambling and in terms of solving, we'll get right to it. And then we'll discover towards the end if we get parity and how we walk out of it and what do we do about it. So, fun puzzle to solve. Again, I do these things just like a 3x3 with a couple variations. So I'm going to go ahead and finish the scramble. Abracadabra. And we're good. So scrambled Master Kilominx, a 4-layer 4 by 4 by 4 by 4 by 4 dodecahedron. Now, I don't want you to misunderstand. This is not. This is going to be solved very similarly to how I'm going to solve a 4 by 4, but this is not a 4 by 4 mod. This is really its own beast. The 4 by 4 mod equivalent to this is, of course, this guy over here. This is a dodecahedron. It's a rhombic dodecahedron. This is a modification of this 4 by 4, and this is a supercube. It's a supercube because basically the center has four different colors. This one does not. Well, it does at the moment, but once I start putting it in, it doesn't. But this is a different animal. This is to this as the 3-layer is to this. So these guys are part of a series here. This is its own beast. So this is not a supercube like this is, and it's not a dodecahedron modification of a 4 by 4. But yet I do solve it very similar to a 4 by 4. So I'm actually going to kind of do it tandemly the way that I did with a 3 by 3, and maybe show some techniques on how that can happen, such as center placement and whatnot. As a matter of fact, why don't I get that scrambled too? All right, pretty good. So the first step is going to be reduction of the centers. The reduction of the centers is basically a process by which you do more assembly than actual solving. So the way that you want to do it, if I were to start with something like this, we'll start off with maybe a green side. Now bear in mind, the difference between this and this is the centers are already laid out. And that's very similar to the 5 by 5 versions. These centers are attached right to the core. So you know that there's a difference between the even and the odd. You can take a look at the assembly video of the 6 by 7 by 7 when it became very apparent the difference between the center of an even and an odd layered puzzle. Because with a even layered puzzle, or rather with an odd layer puzzle, these were screwed right down to the core. They don't move. In association with each other, they stay put. But if you look at it, and you can actually see it in here with the screws here, the actual centers of an even layer puzzle are buried. And these kind of hook onto the side, and these guys move anywhere that you want them to. So you can define the centers to be anywhere you want. But in order to solve the puzzle, they have to be in the right place. It's the same thing with a cube, if you were to take this apart. So the first step is we can just arbitrarily define, I want to put the green one in. So, you know, the green center is here. So you can see that this is just assembly. Now what you want to do is use the corners to decide what comes next. So what comes next is going to be red. The technique that I use is you have to bear in mind the process of placing, turning, and replacing using the different layers. So let's say I wanted to move these two en masse over here without batting this out. So basically move it in. When you did that, you batted this out. But if I double turn it like this, then put it in a different layer, then move it back in, this will bring that back in, and that's over here. Simple stuff for most of you. Now if I want to put the next one in, what I'm actually going to do is let's pre-assemble this. So here's another red one, and I'm going to try to make a 1 by 2 bar. So again, it's the same process of placing, turning, and replacing. So I'm going to move this in over here to create a bar, which will knock this out. So move it in, knocks that out, but then I'm going to turn it out of the way to move it back. So basically everything is put in. Again, starting out basic, but this is I'm going to take this opportunity to describe some of these techniques. So again, placement and replacement, this has to come into here without destroying this. So I'm going to put this into here, which bumps these out of the way, double turn it to bring it back. But when I double turn it, this will end up here. So what I mean by that is move it in, and that puts this here, but if I double turn it like this, I can now move everything that I moved out of the way back in, and there's 2 centers. So that's the first 2 centers over here. The next is we can kind of take a look at what's supposed to come next. Now let's do it this way. What actually comes right to the side? It's going to be yellow. These 2 yellows are already in. We can do the process of assembling. Now you can see that these 2 are already here. Here's another technique that I use that's going to come in useful as you're assembling centers. It's a variation of the technique, but what I'm going to do is, let's say I want to move this in. I'm going to move this to here. I was going to bump this out of the way, but what I'm going to do is move it in here, and I'm going to create a bar on this plane. So I'm going to move it in this plane, and that's the last that I'm going to do until I move it back in this plane. So move it in, I create a bar in this plane. Now I'm going to bump this out of the way along this plane. just opposite of where this was. And then I'm going to move this out of the way. So bump this back down. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to slowly move everything back where they were. So turn this back to where it was before. Put back in the things that I bumped out, like this. And then move this back the other way to put in what I just created, this bar over here. The end result of that is placing one here without taking this out of the way. So kind of watch it if that made sense. Line this up to the place where it's supposed to go, which is here. Then it's a matter of moving it in. Now I'm not going to use algorithms, just kind of pay attention to what I'm doing. Move it in this plane so that I create this bar. Turn this bar out of this plane and then move it down. It's got to be in the same direction. Then move it back, bring this back up, move this back over here, bring this back up. So the end result is you have everything in here. So you can actually get pretty fast with this and speed cube this if you want in order to make that happen. I know just opposite red is orange. So we'll go through that again just to see if that makes sense. This is going to come over to here, let's say. Actually in this case I can just make my bars. So move this into here, which took this out of the way. Move this out of the way and move it back. So now this is created to come over to here. So we line it up so that this is just below where this one is. So we're going to do the process of moving it in while bumping this out, then turning this around to move this to here, and then moving it back. So move it up, bump it out of the way, move it back. So we can very quickly get these centers. We're down to the last two centers. We know that opposite green is blue, so this is where blue is supposed to be. For the last two centers, we're going to do that first technique that I talked about. So let's move this into here. This will come into here. So move this segment in so that we have this. Bump it out of the way just by 90 degrees. Then move it in the same direction. Everything is flowing this way. So you move it back down, then bump it back 90 degrees, the opposite of where you turned it before, and then start moving things back. This comes back in, 90 degrees back this way here, and this comes back in. End result, this is where it needs to be. So let's now move this one in. I'll just put this here. You can put it anywhere, really. So this is going to come over to here, so move it in. And if I had to put an algorithm to it, I suppose, if I'm going to call this R, kind of like a middle R, or L rather, like a middle L, that's going to be L, and then you can go like F, then a middle RI, and then reverse it with an FI, LI, FR. Alright, so that's how you reduce it. This is just a kind of a complex version of that. So starting off with the green, we'll do the dark green. And this is just a matter of assembly. So I'm just going to go through this real quick. This comes into here. This comes into here. And notice I'm solving this really exactly the same way as what I just did. We'll go ahead and assemble a 1x2 little bar here. And that can move in. Bling. Zoom. Okay, so the first one is always the easiest, so this is in. So what comes right next to this? Well, here's a green corner here. Purple is going to be next, and light blue is going to be here. So we're going to start moving the purple in. We've got plenty of wiggle room from this perspective here. So move this in like so. This guy comes in. So we can move it like thus. Now notice what I'm doing is I'm bumping this out of the way, but this moves in, turn it, and move it back. So as long as the overall effect of this is bang, bang, you can move this anywhere around. So when I move this up, this can move wherever it needs to go, and then move it back. So I think I beat that to death. Okay, let's move this purple one in. Now what I could do is put the other purple one right next to it using the same technique of the back and forth. So move this here, turn it, and turn it. Okay, so now this guy can move straight into here. Again, nothing major here. And slide it in. So now what did we say was next? Well, let's find that corner, which is right here. Okay, this is purple, this is going to be white. So now we're kind of building layers of complexity. So I'm going to be using that other technique, basically. I'm going to just start moving things in. So this moves in with this plane. I didn't bump anything else out. Find the other one. Here's two. Two I can use. So what I'm going to do with this is go 1, 2, which brings it in. Now I have to go 2 back to get this back in. So I'm going to turn this so that it coincides with how I'm going to turn this back and go 1, 2. So now what I can do is assemble a white 1x2 bar. Here's a white one over here. Where's another orphan white one right over here. So now that I know this back and forth technique, this putting in and replacing, I have complete freedom to move all around the puzzle. So what plane will move in with this? That would be this one here. So this is going to coincide with this over here. So I'm just going to turn this to the side and go 1, 2. Whoop. That's going to end up over here, so to make this make sense. Now this is review for most, but I don't want to make any assumptions because oftentimes I'll get questions regarding some assumptions that were made with the solve. 1, 2. Okay, very good. So find the white one, it's over here. Now how am I going to move this in? Let me just get this closer here so we can visualize it better. Turn, 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 turn. So how am I going to move this in? Well, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to set it up to where it bumps a set of 2 out, because then when you turn it in, you can turn it back into a set of 2. So here's what I mean by that. If I move this like this over here, this will fill in this spot, and I'll have a set of 2 sitting here, which can take this spot. So just move it in, which bumps this out of the way and bumps this one over here. But I've got a vacant space for 2. Vacant space for 2. English is sometimes just my second language. So move this in appropriately and then just move it back. And I can move these end slices anywhere I want. Okay, so I can see that a yellow goes over here. Now, what you could do is just get all the centers along each plane here, but it really doesn't matter as long as you make your last 2 centers next to each other. So we're just going to have to bear that in mind. But anyway, yellow goes here. I see a set of 2 right here. So we'll just do our putting in and replacing. So this is going to come into here. Bang. And then turn this front part to where I'm not moving any out. And then move it back. So we replace these. So yellow, this one has to come in. Why don't we create a 1x2? We actually have one here already. Turn, 1, 2, turn back. Okay, so now we can place these guys. When placing them, if you want to do a 1x2, make sure that you leave vacant another 1x2 area, which you're not going to have. If I slide this in here, I'm just going to have this one over here, and I won't have any way of moving this back. So what I'm going to do is move this like so, and this will come in and bump this out of the way. This is very similar to what we did with this puzzle over here. So this will come in, bump it out of the way, but that's okay. I have enough vacancies for the 2 that I just bumped out, and I can do any old way. Turn and turn it in. All right, so now I have 1 left. Now I'm going to put this in exactly the same way that I did with the 4x4. This will come into this area over here. Now remember, I'm going to separate out the different planes. Make sure I didn't mess anything up. So I'm going to move this in like so, and when I did that, I created this plane over here. So now I'm going to move this out of the way here. This is the one I just created, so I'm going to move it down, and I'm going to undo what I just did. Move this back to put back this side that I just took out. And now the one that I created, the 1x2, is sitting here safely to come to over here and then put it in. Once you get the hang of this, it's actually quite fun because you can just speed all around here and put all the edges in. Okay, I can see red comes next. So let's see if we can quickly go through that. We have to transport the majority of this over to here. So we'll do that. This turns up. I put 2 in, so let's bat 2 out to put back what I just took out over here. Bang. Now this one I want to put in, but let's see if we can find another one to create a 1x2 bar over here. So we'll line it up. So this can line up with this, turn. Be sure to undo everything that you've done. Okay, so I have a 1x2 bar. I can move this here, just underneath this 1x2 bar, so I can move it in, and then take this and put it into another slot where a 1x2 bar is, right next to this, and there it is. Now with the one left over, let's find the other lone orphaned red, which is right here, and line it up to where this is going to coincide with it. This. Now, we could put it in from here, or I can put it here so I can visualize it better, but here's what you can do if you want to make a long shot. You can go like 1, 2 to create this bar, turn this any old way, and then move it out of the way. Turn this back, but now I have to remember to go 1, 2 back, puts this back in. Now bring this over to place that 1x2 bar that you just created, and it bats back everything that you took out. Alright, so we're doing well. So we'll keep going. We're down to the last 3 centers in gold, so we know what comes next: red, gold, pink. So let's start loading these in the usual way. Here's a pink that's going to come here. Move it in, creating this side. Do a F move, in this case an FI. Move it out with an L. And then just commence on turning it back. And bit by bit, step by step, piece by piece, we assemble it. This to come into here. Turn it in. Turn. Bring it back. Turn it back. Front. Turn it back again, and here. Again, no need for algorithms. Now we're down to the last 2 centers, which in this case, as long as we put it in and it's not a supercube, there's no problems. Remember the issues that we had with this doing the last 2 centers? We had to have a funky algorithm. No need for that. That's what's simple about these puzzles, about this version of it. So, which one takes the light green here, the lime green? Well, let's wheel this around. We don't want to make any assumptions here as to what we think it is. Anyway, this comes here. Swing this to the blue so that this actually takes the green. Not the gray, like it would have been easier to do, but it's no problem. Move this in. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this in so it coincides with one of these pieces right next to it. So move it in. There you go. Turn it to where it can accept this one to move it back. And the good news about doing these non-supercube versions of these puzzles is that when you do the last 2 sides, if you just focus on one, the other will naturally get cured, solved. So this will come here. Turn it in, create the side here. Move this. This is the 1x2 bar that we just created. Pull it back, and now we just undo. And splat. Okay, so using really the same strategy, we've now reduced our centers. What about edges? Well, the process of reduction of edges, the algorithm that I use, and to those that have seen me do similar tutorials, you know what I'm about to do, but basically find the 2 that coincide with each other. So how about the green and white? Whoops. Or I can do that. Anyway, here's the green and white. We'll put these in so that they're just lined up. This is lined up with here. Now this is a similar concept of placing and replacing. So what I'm going to do is I have to dive into this reduced center, move it down here, and then bump it out of the way, and then move this one down, and then move it back. So I just replaced it with this. I took the one that I created over here and replaced it with this and just move it back. It's really as simple as that. So now this is created. You want to continue doing all sides like that, and these tend to go, again, pretty fast. Red and green, which is right here, move it here. Same thing. Now be careful, because the one that you're going to replace it with, have one on top that's not already in. You can see this one is already in. This is the one that's going to replace it. So I'm going to put this one on top. So you've got this just above where it needs to be to coincide with it. Then you've got one that can be replaced right on top, because you're going to go down, which brings this down here, and the one that was on top is here. Then bring this to the side, any side, and now you're going to move this down, bring it in, and move this back up. And without even moving, I can find the red and orange, which is right over here. So now I can do it from the right side as well. On this side, at the top, there's one that's not been used. So down, move it out of the way, bring this down to replace it, and move it up. Once you've done that, you're down to the last two edges, not centers, but edges. So these two have to flip. Now obviously I don't have anything else to substitute it with. So I have to do something of an algorithm. The algorithm that I'm going to be using is you're going to have one on the right and one on the left. And what this is going to do is it's going to flip-flop these two. This will come here and this will come here. Or this will come here and this will come here. And in a 4x4, that's all you need to worry about. So if you look at where this is positioned at, take the one of one color, in this case orange and blue, put it right next to the other orange and blue. This one is orange and green, it's right next to here. Because by doing this algorithm, this will come here to be right next to this, and this will come here to be right next to this. And what you want to do if you want to swap these two is first move it, slice it across like this. So you're going to be moving it based upon the top one. So if the top one is the one that you want to move down here, that's the one you move to the side. But you can also move it to here. The point is that if you go from the left to the right, then you're going to do the rest of the algorithm in this position. If you go to the right to the left and move it here, like this, then you have to do it in this position. So basically follow where you're putting the top. So this comes over here, then do the algorithm R, Fi, U, Ri, F, and then swing it back and everything will be in. And then you'll have all of your edges reduced. So this is really going to be the same thing. There's absolutely no difference. So yellow and blue, well, we see the yellow and white, we have that over here. So we're going to place this into position. And you may have to kind of make a few mistakes in terms of how you position it. Okay, so this is just above here, and it's the same thing. Make sure you have right next to this on the top layer something that you can replace it with. So same thing, move it down so that this is here, and we went into our reduced center there. Move it to the side, move this side down here, replace it with this, and move it back up. And we're going to do exactly the same thing all the way around. So here we have the yellow and green, or orange and green rather, which is right here. So move this into configuration, move it into here, and same thing. This will come here. Obviously I can't use this, so I'm going to move this up, turn it down, move it to the side out of the way, bring this down one here, turn, and bring it up. Okay, how about the blue and yellow? Quickly scout around for it. And it's usually not too hard to find right over here. Obviously this doesn't come into here. Now bear in mind, as I'm doing this, this is how parity gets set up, because as I'm putting this in, I may be setting it up in a way that cannot be solved. In other words, I may be creating edges that can't be solved, because that's really what I'm doing. I'm reducing the edges. I may be reducing them wrong. That might have happened with this. I have no way of knowing. That's where the parity comes from. Should this have been like this, or should this have been placed opposite? You know, this to the right or this to the left. These two look exactly the same. So because of that, I'm setting up this concept of parity where I might be reducing it in a position. This is now a scrambled 3x3 position. I basically have a scrambled odd layer 3x3 puzzle. But I may have assembled this and reduced this in a way that could never have been scrambled if I started out as a 3x3. Hence the parity, and I won't know that until I see an impossible situation where I have 3 up and 1 down, or some such like that. But the challenge that I have, the question that I have is, do you get that with this puzzle? Do you get that kind of parity? Now, let's discover it. So I got a bunch of oranges. Here's an orange and blue here. Move this in. And the 4-layer puzzles are fun because they go fairly quick. No matter how many layers they have, there's not a whole lot of hunting around for reducing. And once you do it, you move on and you find you're closer to being done than you thought. Okay, now we bring this here. So now we are on the last 2 centers. And it's actually exactly the same thing. Now, you can see this is pink and gray, and this is blue and gray, pink and gray, and blue and gray. So I hope you can see that. I probably should have used opposite colors and not 2 of the same, but there it is. So what this algorithm is going to do is it's going to do the same thing. This will come here and this will come here. Well, we don't want to swap these 2, right? So let's put them across from each other to where we want the top and the bottom to swap, and then everything will be fine. So if we were to do the same thing, line up the blue and gray with the blue and gray over here, and this will swap these 2. Now, do I have to change the algorithm? And the answer is no. It's exactly the same. So watch what happens. We move this in, slice this over here, then we do an R, F-I, U, R-I, F, and slice it back, and there it is. So now you've reduced the edges, and it was exactly the same. Now, oftentimes we do have to vary the algorithms, as you saw when we did the 3x3, especially when we're doing U moves. Sometimes we have to do a 3U instead of a 2U. Here, because it was pretty straight in terms of what had to be done, you didn't have to variate that at all. So that's basically how you reduce the edges. Now I'm going to have a actual special feature with this now, because what about the higher order ones? At some point I've been getting some requests to do 5-layer puzzles, and the reduction of those edges, like if you're to see over here, you actually have to put more than 1 in, and that could get a little bit more complicated, especially with the last 2 edges, because you may have to do a set where this substitutes with this comes here and this comes here, and these have to turn. This is the 5-layer, this is the 4-layer, but what if I had to do it on the 6th-layer? So if this is the Kilominx, and this is the Master Kilominx, well, Kilominx, megaminx, Master Kilominx, gigaminx, this would be the Elite Kilominx. Now what I did with the Elite Kilominx so far is I put in all the centers, and as you can see, these centers, this is the Kilominx center over here, looks just like this, but you have these extra aspects of the centers. And instead of 2 that you have to put in, there's 4 that you put in here. So now let's consider what should happen if our prediction is correct. What should happen is that this will come up here and will be just fine. When this comes over here, this will come here, but these 2 will flip, and that's exactly what I want. So in putting in higher order edges like this, bear in mind if I'm moving this from the left to the right, this will stay the same, and this will just move up here. This will come here, but what's right in the middle will flip. Let's see if that works. So we're going to do our old turn over here, then we'll go like R, F-I, U, R-I, F, and swing it on back. And it works. Lo and behold, it works. So why did I do that? Well, the reason that I did that is because sometimes algorithms that we use for lower order puzzles have characteristics that we don't see in the lower order puzzles, but we have to kind of observe in the higher order puzzle so that we can variate or not variate what we do. So because of that known effect of these 2 flipping, I'm able to put these in without having very difficult parity situations. So now I've got these in exactly the same situation here.